All right, get ready to dive deep into uh, entrepreneurship and some seriously unconventional wisdom
Hmm.
because you guys requested Raj Shamani's Build, Don't Talk. And let me tell you, this book does not hold back. It's not your
Oh.
typical business advice book, that's for sure.
It is not. No, Shamani's known for like his super direct style. And he definitely challenges like a lot of traditional thinking, like starting with the idea that formal education, like that's the only path to success.
Oh, absolutely. He even goes so far as to call himself the useless kid,
Character.
right?
Oh,
He was terrible in school, but he had this like burning passion for business from such a young age. Makes you think, what if we were all encouraged to like explore that entrepreneurial side of ourselves way earlier on?
yeah. It's a really interesting thought experiment, right? I mean, he actually proposes this radical idea of a school where kids just run businesses instead of just sitting in classrooms.
Real.
Imagine, learning about negotiation and marketing and like customer service by actually doing it, building a real business from the ground up. What do you think? Would you have thrived in that kind of environment?
Oh, I think a lot of us would have. It certainly would have been a lot more engaging than like memorizing formulas and stuff.
Right.
And speaking of real world experience, Shamani shares this fantastic story about starting like a dishwashing liquid business as a teenager.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This story is like the perfect example of his build, don't talk philosophy, right? He saw a need in the market. Like people wanted liquid soap, but all the options were way too expensive. So what does he do? He starts experimenting in his kitchen, with like formulas and stuff.
It's amazing how resourceful he was. Like he even turned to LinkedIn when he couldn't afford expert advice.
Mhm.
He tapped into what he calls the student power of begging to find a consultant who could help him make sure his product was safe.
That's an intriguing concept, isn't it? The student power of begging. It's about, leveraging your position as a student or someone who is, eager to learn and finding mentors and resources. It's about being humble and being persistent.
It's about not being afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, exactly. And, that experience, it taught him so much more than just how to make dish soap. Or
Right.
it instilled in him, like, the importance of action over overthinking. Get out there and experiment. Don't get stuck in that analysis paralysis.
It's a lesson I think a lot of us could benefit from.
Yeah.
I know I can. It's so easy to get caught up in all the planning and the researching
Yeah.
that you never actually take that first step. So Shamani's stories, it's a good reminder to just start building, even if it's messy, even if it's imperfect at first.
Totally. And that ties into another one of his core principles, which is embrace copying, but ethically, of
Oh,
course.
of course. Yeah.
He argues that, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, study what's already working out there, learn from the best, and then adapt those ideas to your own unique situation.
So it's not about plagiarizing. It's about like finding inspiration,
Yeah.
right? And guidance from those who have already achieved what you're aiming for. It's about, standing on the shoulders of giants.
Exactly. And he is a huge believer in honing one key skill that really sets you apart from the crowd. He even argues that his background as a jack of all trades, it actually became his strength
Yeah.
because it exposed him to so many different fields and ways of thinking.
Which is kind of counterintuitive, right? We're always told to specialize, become an expert in this one, narrow niche. But Shamani's experience kind of suggests that having like a broad range of skills and experiences can actually be a huge advantage in, today's world where things are changing so rapidly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about connecting the dots, right, between seemingly unrelated areas, finding that unique intersection, where your skills and your passions can actually create something new and valuable. And to help you do just that, he actually offers this really practical framework for generating business ideas. It's all about finding that, sweet spot where your strengths, a market need, and your genuine passions, like they all align. He breaks it down into 3 steps.
Okay, let's break it down.
All right.
So step one is identify an industry that really, truly excites you. Doesn't have to be like trendy or what everyone else is doing, but something that genuinely lights your fire.
Right. Then step 2, you take stock of your strengths. What are you naturally good at? What skills come easily to you? Even if they seem kind of unconventional or quirky, don't dismiss anything. Those unique abilities, those could be your secret weapon. Think about it. What are some things you're good at that other people struggle with?
I love how he encourages you to embrace those quirks.
Hmm.
And then step 3 is where it all comes together, right?
Yeah.
You find a problem in that industry that your unique strength can solve. Like that's where the magic happens, right? The intersection of what you love, what you're good at, and what the market needs.
Right.
It's brilliant.
It's yeah.
Have you ever thought about applying this framework to your own life?
Absolutely. I think it's such a powerful tool for anyone who, wants to create something meaningful, whether it's a business, a project, even just like a new approach to your work.
Yeah.
And once you have that idea, he doesn't let you off the hook. He dives deep into the art of selling and negotiation, emphasizing that it's not about manipulation, it's about understanding like human psychology.
Yes. He argues that people buy based on two main emotions, fear or aspiration.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, the key to successful selling is figuring out, okay, what's driving this potential customer? Are they afraid of missing out, or are they aspiring to like a better version of themselves? What do you think about that idea? That one really resonated with me.
Yeah. It's a brilliant insight, right? It's
Yeah.
not about like pushing your product or idea on someone. It's about understanding their underlying, motivations and then framing your pitch in a way that really resonates with like their needs and desires.
Yeah, it really makes you think differently about how we approach like everything from sales presentations to even just like convincing a friend to try that new restaurant you like.
Right.
Speaking of which, Shamani gives this really practical method for like structuring your sales approach. He calls it P plus E plus U.
P plus E plus U. That stands for preparation, emotion, and urgency.
Oh,
It's so simple, yet incredibly effective.
yeah,
First, you prepare, right?
right.
By truly understanding your product or service, your customer, and their pain points. Then you connect with them on an emotional level, tapping into, either that fear of missing out or their aspirations for something better. And finally, you create that sense of urgency, giving them a reason to act now rather than later.
Right. It's almost like a formula for like persuasive communication, right?
Yeah.
And he even walks through like a really detailed example of how to use this method when you're selling a product, which I found super helpful. He even talks about how to handle objections with empathy, like not just brushing those concerns aside, but really addressing the buyer's anxieties and
Yeah.
demonstrating how your product, actually solves their problems.
Yeah, it's all about building that trust and showing that you genuinely care about helping the other person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that same principle applies to negotiation, which he tackles next.
Yeah.
His big rule for negotiation is all about managing the power shift and making the other person feel like they're winning. Have you ever thought about negotiation from that angle?
I think that's such a smart approach. Yeah.
Yeah.
He even says to never state your price first. Let the
Right.
other person make the first offer,
Exactly.
which gives you valuable information about, their budget and their priorities.
Mm-hmm.
It also kind of puts you in a stronger position
Yeah.
because you're not, anchoring the negotiation with a potentially lower number.
Right, right. And it can prevent you from, leaving money on the table.
Exactly.
You can then focus on like adding value and sweetening the deal without compromising on your core price. Ultimately, it's about framing the negotiation as a win-win where both sides feel like they got a good deal.
Yeah. I think we could all use a little more win-win in our lives for sure. Before we dive into like his financial advice, there's this really insightful section on the three kinds of observers that I wanted to touch on. It's not directly related to business, but it provides such a fascinating framework for like understanding different personality types and how people kind of interpret the world.
It's a great example of how Shamani draws from like various disciplines to offer a more like holistic view of success, right?
Mhm.
He categorizes people based on their motivations and how they perceive the world. And it's not about like judging or labeling, it's simply understanding like the different lenses through which we all experience reality,
Right.
which can be so helpful for, navigating relationships, work environments, even your own like personal growth.
So he breaks it down into three types, right? You've got your rule followers, your emotionally driven observers, and your rational optimists. So rule followers, they thrive on like structure, predictability. They're really good at following instructions and achieving, those predetermined goals.
They often excel in, more traditional environments like school or like corporate settings. They value like security and stability, and they make decisions based on, logic and what's proven to work in the past. Does that sound like anyone you know?
Oh, definitely. We all probably have a little rule follower in us.
Right.
And then you have your emotionally driven observers who are like super attuned to, the emotional currents of the world. They're creative, they're passionate, and often driven by like a really deep sense of purpose.
These are the artists, the musicians, the entrepreneurs, who find inspiration in their own experiences and use their work as a way to connect with others on like an emotional level. They're often driven by that desire to, express themselves and make a meaningful impact on the world.
They're the ones who wear their heart on their sleeve, and you can really feel that energy in their work. But, as Shamani points out, this emotional intensity, it can be both a strength and a challenge.
Right.
It can fuel incredible creativity, but it
Hmm.
can also, lead to burnout or self-doubt if it's not managed well.
Right. It's about finding that balance.
Yeah.
And then finally, you have the rational optimists who approach life with a healthy dose of skepticism, but also this underlying belief in their ability to like figure things out.
They're the build, don't talk types in a nutshell. They're
Mm.
curious, they're adaptable, and they're driven by this desire to learn and grow.
They're not afraid to question assumptions,
Yeah.
experiment, learn from their mistakes.
They embrace challenges. They believe that with, effort and a clear head, they can achieve anything.
They see the world as a puzzle to be solved, and they're always looking for new information, new perspectives. Shamani argues that this mindset is like essential in today's rapidly changing world where adaptability and a willingness to like embrace the unknown are key.
Yeah. It's so interesting to think about, like, which type you identify with most and how that shapes your interactions with other people. Now, shifting gears to a more practical topic, let's talk about Shamani's perspective on wealth creation. He has a very unique take on it. He argues it's not just about earning money, it's about building a system where your money works for you.
He uses this very provocative analogy comparing having children in India to like a traditional investment strategy for old age.
Okay.
You invest in raising them, and then they, in turn, are kind of expected to support you later in life.
It's a bold comparison, but it highlights this cultural norm that he's challenging. He believes that modern wealth creation, it should be about creating systems and investments that generate income passively
Hmm.
rather than relying solely on traditional structures or just working harder and harder.
He advocates for financial freedom, where your money is working for you even while you sleep.
Right.
And he's refreshingly transparent about his own investment approach.
Yeah.
He allocates 50% to blue chip stocks and mutual funds, 30% to angel investing in startups, and 10% to what he calls absolute certainties, like real estate and insurance.
Now, it's important to note that this is just one example, and it reflects his personal risk tolerance and his investment goals. Your own portfolio might look completely different based on, your individual circumstances and what you're comfortable with. The key takeaway here is to think about your own financial goals, your risk tolerance, and what kind of investment strategy aligns best with your, long-term vision.
He also offers some advice on what not to invest in based on his own experience and observations. Hmm.
He cautions against putting all your eggs in one basket, especially when it comes to things like physical goals or ULPs or blindly following hype without really understanding the market.
Right. He stresses the importance of doing your research, understanding where your money's going and being wary of like anyone who promises unrealistic returns. It's about empowering yourself as an investor, not just handing over your money to someone else and hoping for the best.
It's about taking ownership of your financial future and making informed decisions that align with your own personal goals and values.
Now, before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on some of the bonus insights that Shimani shares about like public speaking, social media, and just life in general. He actually talks about his journey from being that self-proclaimed useless kid to becoming a TEDx speaker, which is pretty inspiring.
He overcame severe stage fright and really honed his public speaking skills through practice and preparation and putting himself out there, even when it was uncomfortable. Right. And he even reveals this fascinating tip about the power of the pause at the beginning of his speech.
Oh, yeah.
He says that a deliberate silence can break the audience's auto response and command their attention in a way that words alone just can't.
It's such a simple yet effective technique. It really demonstrates his understanding of the psychology of communication.
Yeah.
It's about using silence strategically to create anticipation, draw people in.
And when it comes to social media, he emphasizes the importance of providing value, growing organically, and adapting to, the ever-changing landscape of platforms.
He's not about chasing like those quick wins or that viral fame.
Yeah.
He's all about building genuine connections with your audience and consistently delivering content that really resonates with them.
It's about being authentic, being engaging, and providing real value that keeps people coming back for more.
Absolutely.
And that really ties into his broader life advice, right?
Yeah.
Focusing on building genuine connections, adding value to the world, and being open to opportunities, even if they come from unexpected places.
Yeah.
This resonated with me a lot. Have you ever had an experience where An unexpected opportunity led to something amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. It's amazing how life can surprise you, when you're open to new experiences and connections. Sometimes, like, the most unexpected paths can lead to the most rewarding destinations. That's why he, encourages us to step outside our comfort zones and embrace the unknown a little bit.
It's that build, don't talk mindset,
Mm.
but applied to life in general, right?
Yeah.
Taking action, connecting with people, and just being open to those new possibilities as they come up.
Yeah.
He even talks about the importance of reaching out to people that you admire, like offering to help them, adding value to their lives, even if it seems like, a small gesture.
Yeah, it's about building like genuine relationships, not just transactional ones.
Hmm.
You never know where those connections might lead, or how you might be able to help each other grow. I think that's something we often forget in our, busy, achievement-oriented lives.
It's easy to get caught up in our own goals and forget about the power of just, connecting with others and offering a helping hand. But those small acts of generosity, they can have this ripple effect, creating a more positive and supportive ecosystem for everyone.
Exactly. And that's a recurring theme throughout the book. It's not just about individual success, it's about building a better world by empowering others, sharing your knowledge, and contributing to something larger than yourself.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious, what are some of the biggest takeaways that stood out to you from Shami's book? What really resonated with you the most?
Well, for me, it's the emphasis on action over overthinking. It's so easy to get stuck in that analysis paralysis,
Yeah.
But he reminds us that the best way to learn and grow is to just start building, experimenting, and iterating along the way. That and the student power of begging.
Yeah.
It's such a clever concept, and it really highlights the importance of, being resourceful, being humble, and being willing to ask for help when you need it.
Yeah, those are great points. I was also really struck by his three-step framework for generating business ideas. It's such a simple but powerful tool for, finding that sweet spot where your passions, your skills, and the market needs, they all align.
Right.
And it's something I think, we can all apply to our own lives, whether we're, quote unquote entrepreneurs or not. And his advice on the psychology of selling and negotiation was incredibly insightful. It really shifted my perspective on how to communicate persuasively and build those win-win relationships.
Absolutely. Shamani's book is full of practical advice and unconventional wisdom, but ultimately it's not about blindly following some blue and eye. It's about taking what resonates with you, adapting it to your own circumstances, and then taking action.
He's given us a lot to think about.
Yes.
If you're listening, we would love to hear your thoughts. What resonated with you the most from our deep dive into Build, Don't Talk? What are you inspired to build? And what knowledge or skills do you think are missing from traditional education that could help, empower future generations to become builders and creators? Let us know. Until next time, keep building, keep learning, and keep diving deep.